Today on Hands On Photography, man, we're going to nerd out today about some lenses. I have Mr. Roger Cicala from Lensrentals to share all of the ins and outs about all of those really less expensive lenses to those massive expensive lenses. This is going to be fun. Y'all stay tuned.
This is TWiT.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Pruitt, and this is Hands On Photography here on TWiT TV. I hope y'all are doing well. I'm unbelievable as always. This is the podcast where I love to sit down and tell you all the different tips and tricks that's going to help you be a better photographer, a better post-processor, and just sort of every now and then get a little bit of nerdiness to it to help you out. And boy, we're going to get a little bit nerdy today. Whew, I can't wait. If this is your first time joining us today, I want to say welcome to you and thank you for joining. Now go ahead and do me a favor. And it's not that hard. Just go ahead and hit subscribe and give me a rating over there on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an oldish guy like myself, we call that iTunes. So you go to iTunes and leave us a rating, leave us a comment, and that way the podcast gods will sort of push us up and let other people know about hands-on photography and help grow this podcast in the podcast community. So thank you for that continued support. But now, without further ado, I want to go ahead and get started with this week's show. Okay, so we've been talking about different tools and gear for your photography. And specifically, we've been talking about lenses and all of the use cases for different types of lenses. Well, some of you have hit me up in the past and say, well, Ant, I like this lens, but it costs too much. Well, Ant, this lens only costs X amount of dollars, but it doesn't quite look as good. Why? I have the guy with us this week to talk about that, and it's going to let us know the different ins and outs when it comes to the quality of a lens from an aesthetic standpoint, from a mechanical standpoint. He knows it all. But let me just go ahead and bring him on. This is Mr. Roger Cicala of Lensrentals.com. Mr. Roger, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing all right for an old man. How you doing?
I am unbelievable. Thank you so much for joining me this week. It's quite a thrill because let me tell you, I've been a customer of Lensrentals for quite a while now. And I was telling you in our green room earlier that whenever I was doing a job for some clients, it depended on the job. I'd say, hey, I need you to rent this or that for me so I can do this job because it's just extra gear. And I tell them, go to Lensrentals because Lensrentals is going to make it easy for me and they're going to make it easy for you. So I just want to give you your kudos and say thank you for everything you folks do for us photographers and content creators out there, because y'all really do help us out in the field. But you mind telling the folks a little bit more about Lensrentals and how you got it started and where you all are located and so forth?
Well, I can tell a lot about how we got it started, but nowadays we're in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's outgrown my capabilities. There's some good people that run most of the day-to-day stuff there. I am not a logistics person or a business person, and they do that way better than I do. But when it started, I was a physician with a bad habit. I was into photography, and I bought way too much equipment, as we all do.
No comment.
Yeah, I know. And so I was literally thinking, well, I need a 500 millimeter f4 because I'm going on an Alaskan cruise and there's some wildlife opportunities and I needed this lens. I didn't, but I thought I did. So I thought I'd just rent it for the trip and found out I could not. If you lived in Memphis or, almost anywhere in the country besides the coasts or Chicago, renting meant you basically bought it and then shipped it to yourself, and then when you shipped it back, they'd recredit you part of what it was worth, and it was ridiculous. So I bought it and took it and came back, had buyer's remorse, and thought, well, maybe somebody wants to rent it like I did, and that's what started Lensrentals. I put that and everything I owned on a little website I got for $50.
Wow.
And truth, and horrible website. And, the reason I put everything else I owned on it was because I thought it'd be, stupid to just have one lens. So literally 2 weeks later, I had to borrow a camera and a lens for a shoot I'd promised to do because I'd rented everything I owned.
Oh my goodness. So literally just said, you know what? I got all this stuff. I wonder if I can rent it out. You literally just sort of ho-hummed it and boom, it blew up.
It did. And of course, when everything was rented out, the logical answer is, I need more stuff.
I need more stuff. Oh, man.
And I was lucky and I was naive. I mean, I should have gotten all of my stuff stolen. And, later on I did get stuff stolen, but by then it was too late and I was committed to it.
All right. Oh my goodness, man. I'm so happy for you. One of my favorite instances of lens rentals is like if I've had to go to CES or say like Adobe Max, and sometimes it's a pain in the butt to travel with gear, quite frankly.
Especially these days.
Right. So I could have my client say, you know what, send it to the hotel for me. And sure enough, it'll be there when I get there, because you guys work pretty close with schedules and all of the tracking information. So you may not be into logistics, Mr. Cicala, but your squad is. And I appreciate that stuff. It totally works. And it always comes in these nice secure packages and things aren't all beat up and broken down, and you get it and you're ready to go to work, which is perfect for me because when I'm on those assignments, I don't have a lot of time. I'm out there to work. So I'm trying to get it done.
That's key is your rental starts when you get it. So if you're like traveling for a day and a half,
right,
renting it to travel with it, have it waiting for you at the FedEx and pick it up.
Exactly. I absolutely love that. And I highly recommend every single time someone asks me about trying out some gear, don't buy it yet, just go rent it first. And here's the people to rent it from.
See if you like it. That's a big thing.
Exactly. But I wanted to pick your brain a little bit because you also have a podcast and you have a blog for lens rentals. And particularly on that blog, you guys do a bit of, a little bit of destruction. We'll call it instructional destruction. That's what I'm going to call it.
we put it back together, so it's not really destroyed.
Oh, my goodness. Well, see, here recently, you took a Canon L series 100 millimeter to 500 millimeter, and it had a broken element, a cracked element on the inside, right?
Right.
So you and your team said, you know what, we need to figure out why this happened because, it's dealing with the image stabilization unit, and you get a lot of rattling and things like that anyway with those models. But of course, you're a little more curious about it, and you took this lens apart.
Yeah.
Really? You took it apart?
From our side, at the moment we did this, people are going, the IS unit rattles. They didn't used to do that. Mm-hmm. Canon said, well, we've made it so it doesn't need to be locked anymore. It's stable. But everybody's going, it rattles and this element broke. Those two are probably related. So the only way to do it is to figure it out. I mean, looking through it, you can't tell which of those 17 elements is broken.
Right.
And then there's the other part of we do a lot of repairs in-house. So for most new lenses that we carry a lot of, we will disassemble one to make a repair manual for our techs. Not as much as we did that one, though, because that ended up being I have a rule that whatever's broken is the hardest thing to get to. There are probably 200 parts on this lens, and part 198 was the one that was broken.
Oh, man. Oh, my gosh. I read that, and I'm thinking he spent a day just getting this thing apart to figure it out. Literally a day, and I'm not exaggerating, folks. A day's work just to get it apart. And I wanted to touch on that because people are asking me about lenses and wanting to know, should I get this lens versus this lens? So if they're in the Sony line, they're saying, hey, Sony just announced this new G Master f/2.8 or what have you. Well, why should I spend an extra $1,000 or an extra $500 for this lens versus their other lens that's going to work on my mirrorless, yada, 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 yada. And ideally, at least in my own experience, I could see a difference in clarity and sharpness just with some of these lenses. You spend a little bit more, put the shutter and aperture the same settings and snap the frame. You see it totally from a clarity standpoint. And that makes a difference depending on who you are as a photographer and as a content creator. If your client is a magazine and they wanted you to shoot a model for a print, you need that thing to look good. and no compromise. So that's what I'm saying is, okay, that's probably why you're spending a lot more. But based on what I saw on your blog post, there's more to it than just the clarity of that lens. There's a lot of moving parts, right?
There's a whole lot. And, construction quality is part of it, especially if you're buying a lens you expect to keep for years and use a lot.
Mm-hmm.
How it's built determines, are you still using it in 5 years, or have you sent it to repair 3 times in 5 years?
Right. Right.
Which repair nowadays isn't like the old days where, I sent it in for 2 weeks and it's $100. Now I sent it in for a month and it was a third the cost of a new lens. So that's the thing. Nobody thinks about it till they need it. You don't think about it when you're buying pretty shiny, but that's a big deal. The other thing that people are paying for is the quality of assembly so that there's less variation between lenses. If I give you 5 of a given lens and you really look carefully, you may see a little difference if it's a high quality lens, or you may see a lot of difference if it's a low quality lens.
Right.
So those 2 things are important.
So let's say, like, look at the and I'm not trying to pick on this brand, but Rokinon. Am I even saying that right?
I think it's Rokinon, but you may be right. I don't know.
Rokinon. I see that brand all the time, and they have legit pricing, to at least say, I should consider this. But at the same time, there's a lot of instances where I look at it just on the screen. The build quality looks a little cheaper, looks a little plasticky and things like that. So I wonder about durability. Yet at the same time, I see a lot of my peers snatching them up and using them. How would one...
Perfect example to me. It's about, are your expectations reasonable?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've got, let's say, this $500 Rokinon or this $2,200 brand name, and these are my choices I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
If I go in going, I can get the same thing for $500, then I'm stupid.
No, that's not going to happen.
What if my needs are, I hardly ever use an 24-1.4. I'm going to use it once in a great while. I'm not worried about it holding up. The Rokinon may be a great choice.
Right.
And maybe if I'm a little less critical about variation between copies, it's a great choice. The other part of that, and I use that example price of $500. Let's say I get the Rokinon and I do use it, and after a year and a half it breaks.
Mm.
Okay, I probably have to get a new one. They're really not repairable, and that's okay. Especially when I consider that any repair, if I drop that $2,100 lens, is going to be $500.
Okay. Gotcha.
So when I look at that, I go, here's a chance for me to spend less money, get a quality product that'll do okay. I can't expect it to be quite as good, and I can't expect it to last as long. But that's not what I'm going with. I'm going with the $500 lens instead of the $2,100 lens. And I think the problem comes when people go, Joe got one of those Rokinons and it was awesome and it's gorgeous, and I got one and it's a little different than his and not quite as good, and I expect perfect for my $500. Well, that's not what you get.
Can we say that's not quite reasonable, folks?
That's not what folks say, but that's what I think.
Yeah, I'm serious. I've considered grabbing one of those just to goof off, because since moving here to Northern California, I've decided I wanted to try to get more into astro, and being on a full frame sensor, it's probably best that I get something that's at least 16 mil. Anything tighter than that is just not going to be feasible, in my opinion. And every time I'm searching for that, it's either the 16 to 35L from Canon, because I'm a Canon shooter, or that Rokinon. And it's $1,000 difference.
Exactly. And it's something that you're not sure you're going to be doing for 5 years.
Right.
It's a great opportunity for it.
Right.
Another guy I know, and this was an interesting thought, but he was going down the Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
He left all of his L lenses home and he bought 4 Rokinons.
Well, because if they get destroyed,
boat, well, it's not so bad.
That's great logic. We have to consider that. So I guess we could say that's the lesson of this, is still understand what your needs are, and sometimes the old adage of buy cheap, you buy them twice.
Right.
Can
sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. And again, I don't envy you and your team for breaking those lenses down to create manuals for them. No part of that. There's so many different screws, so many different types of screws and quality of screws when you're dealing with certain lenses like that particular 100 to 500. Yeah, my hat's off to you all, but it was a little hard reading that. It was a little difficult to read it.
Aaron sits there and does all the work, and I couldn't do it. Honestly, I couldn't have done that lens. I took the pictures and I wrote it up, but I go like, mm-mm.
Now, you also do some other research there with lens rentals in your company. What's some of the other things you do besides just breaking them down to put manuals together for them?
Well, I started about a decade ago doing optical testing because I found out you couldn't get it. I used to argue with, say, Canon or Nikon about the lens being not right. Mm-hmm. And they go, it's in spec. And I go, what spec? And they go, oh, you can't understand.
Lies.
I ended up investing a lot of money when I sold part of Lens Rentals and developed the testing portion, which has become real valuable for us because we test all our equipment. So when somebody goes, is this lens okay? I know it is. I can pull up the charts.
Right.
But it's also really fun. And so we do a lot of testing. We were the first ones to do MTF testing. We were the first ones to do spectrometry, which is interesting. People don't think about that. The color of each lens, it can be different. And the cool thing for us is we started doing it because what was happening was really expensive lenses would get a scratch on the front, and the person who owned it would have that kind of polished out, sell it, but they were polishing off the coating when they did it.
No.
And I'm talking about cinema lenses, 15, 20.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so the answer was we got a spectrometry set up. We put the lens on the spectrometer. We know what color it should be, but if you polished off the coating, it's not that color anymore.
Oh, my goodness. Oh.
So this is the kind of stuff that I get into, and I think it's fun. Nobody else in the world does, but I think it is.
Look here, Mr. Roger, I love you, but I got to question your definition of fun, sir.
Yeah, You said it was going to be a geek episode.
Holy moly. I'm pulling my hair out right now thinking about these testing and the things that you're going to see and find. And again, a salute to you because you're the man for it, not Aunt Pruitt. Well, is there anything you'd like to share before we let you go, Mr. Cicala?
Not at all, except, I'm going to say every race car driver needs a good mechanic. That's what I enjoy. I'm the good mechanic.
Now that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Well said. Thank you so much, Mr. Cicala, for joining me. This has been a fun and quite enlightening conversation, and I'm sure everybody here in the hands-on photography community appreciates this as well. So thank you again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
All right. Okay, folks, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all so much for joining in and checking us out each and every Thursday here on the network. If you have any questions, feedback, comments, feel free to shoot an email to hop@twit.tv. I do my very best to answer all of my emails. I get to them eventually. I know some of you sent some things back around the holidays, and I'm just now answering you here in the spring. Bear with me. I'm getting there. I appreciate all the support. And feel free to give me a follow over on social media. That's Ant_Pruitt on Twitter, as well as Ant_Pruitt on Instagram. I love chatting with you all over there and just sort of hanging out and just talking nonsensical stuff every now and then. It's not always photography with me. It's close, but not always. And again, do me a favor and leave me a rating and subscribe and do all that magical algorithmic stuff to help push the show up in the ratings and let other folks find out about hands-on photography. But until next time, I will talk to you all again. Safely create and dominate. Y'all take care.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you would like to laugh while learning about how to take control and take advantage of all of the features that your iOS devices provide, then you should check out iOS Today. The show Rosemary Orchard, my co-host, and I, Micah Sargent, host every week on the TWiT network. It's all things Apple all the time.